May 16th in the year 2000, we got MXPX. I think this is what their third or fourth record.
Yeah, I want to say it's their. I think it's their third, but no, maybe their fourth because there's the first one that no one ever talks about, and
Right. But yeah, I
then
think it is their fourth record.
uh, life in general, and then slowly going with Buffalo, and then we got here, right?
Right. So this
Yeah.
is yes, this is after slowly going the way of Buffalo. The ever passing moment. 15 songs, 40 minutes. It's a little meatier than the No Effects record we're going to talk about. Is it 15 songs or 14?
15. It's
It
one
is
song
15.
more.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's right. But it's like 8.5 minutes longer. So it's a beefier record if you want to like just throw them on. No
Mm-hmm.
Effects record passes really quick. This one is a more of an experience. You're going on a journey with this band. I'll say it like this. I'm a big fan of MXPX. I really dislike Life in General. I know it's like their big album.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't care for it. The thing is that I grew up listening to that record, so I don't really know when it changed. I don't like actively dislike it, I guess, but I'm not a big fan of that record. There's a couple of songs that I just don't care for. But I find that the later they go, like in their career, like the more I enjoy their music. The Slowly Going Away the Buffalo is probably my favorite album by them. And their latest one is probably my second favorite record by them. They're so good later on. And we'll talk about why in a few minutes. But this album, I have to admit, I don't know that I ever listened to it very much before now. It's got the single.
It's got Responsibility, which is
That's the song that I knew.
probably their biggest song. All things considered.
Like
It was,
period.
yeah. I mean, it's that it's that Chick Magnet. It's I would say the most people have heard, save for one of these some of these songs that might have been on the Tony Hawk video games. Most people have heard Responsibility if they've heard a MXPX song.
Okay.
Within the like MXPX universe, I think those other songs, like Chick Magnet and Teenage Politics, are probably bigger songs within like their whole thing. But I think Responsibility was probably, because of this album and this kind of being about their biggest album, probably the peak of their visibility. That's kind of thought of as a big song at a time when, as you were saying, this type of music, why they get categorized as pop punk for many reasons, but one is that type of music was kind of popular at the time. So this was that song it put them right there in the collage of all the stuff in 2000 that kind of sounded like this. That was sort of their contribution to that. So I like to think of this record as sort of their mainstream record, even though they've never really been that underground. But they've also never been that super mainstream either.
I was going to counter with they've never
been
that mainstream. I thought they were more underground than they were mainstream personally. But look, this is just from my perspective.
Yeah, they were in. So they were on they had to deal with A&M Records, which I think they got initially somehow through Tooth and Nail, which is a big part of their origin story. And they had enough money. They had all of like the Blink guys kind of taking them in and sort of fostering them along. That Jerry Finn produced the album, so that's the big pop punk producer of the day. So they have, this album has all of those fixings to it. But I think like what you were saying is true in terms of how they changed. I think this album is a big part of that sort of change of what most of their career is, because I think of MXPX as this like kiddie pop punk band, because I think that's kind of what their identity is, and that's what I knew them as a lot. But like a majority of their catalog is a lot of like dad punk and dad pop punk and a lot more of serious tone, more reflective kind of stuff. And this album really is, I think, where you have more of it that's like that. And by the time you get to these later albums, it's mostly that stuff.
I thought that Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo was more serious in tone than this record, and we're going to get to a lot of this in the next few minutes, because I like this album like a lot more than I thought I was going to. There's probably like half of it that I would put on personal playlists, and we'll get into specific songs in a little bit. But the production on this, like you said, Jerry Finn's a pretty major producer. I think that really shines through on this record. I think that here's the thing. Let's start talking about individual songs a little bit, because this is kind of how I break down albums. Okay. The first song is called My Life Story. It starts off with probably the best song on the entire album. That song is amazing. And the thing is that it's incredibly catchy. It's got a great hook. The production's good. The songwriting, the structure of the song is just like it's it's like the perfect example of a pop punk song. It's got all these pop sensibilities, all this like honestly polish. But if you break it down to like what's the guitar chord, what does the riff sound like? If you were to just play it in a live setting, it's very punk rock. So
That's the whole song. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but like, well, I mean, listen to like the vocal melody and stuff, and the song is great, man. And when you get down to the very end of the album, you have what is it called? What's the song called? Misplaced
Misplaced
Memories.
memories. Yeah.
That song's much more somber in tone. It's got like an Alkaline Trio Living In feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Great melody and fantastic way to close off the album, of course. But yeah, and then the chorus in that song's got some familiar like melody to some 80s pop song I can't put my finger on. So if anybody knows what I'm talking about, please help me out in the comments, dude. What 80s pop song, it might be mid 90s, early 90s, but I think it's an 80s song, is Misplaced Memories got like a similar hook to. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That's it. I'm trying to pull up Misplaced Memories just to go to the chorus. You said it's in the chorus.
Yeah, dude, it drove me nuts. I listened to it like 10 times. It's yeah, once you hear
It's
it a
hard to
couple,
pin down because it sounds like a lot of just music from that time period. It
and
also
it might
sounds like
just yeah,
a ton
it
of
might,
different Green Day songs all in one as well. There's
there's
a
a
lot
little
of
Green
that.
Day. It definitely has more Alkaline Trio and Living End than it does Green Day in that particular song. But there's this like
Yeah.
there's this weird like little like 4 measure melody part that's like straight up from an 80s song. But I
Mhm.
mean, you know, I'm not even tripping. But obviously, Responsibility is a good song. I don't like it as much as everybody else does. I think it's a good song, but I don't like freak out about it. I like the other tracks on this that stick out to me. The Next Big Thing has a great guitar riff and an awesome melody. The bridge breaks it up and keeps it interesting. Foolish has got a lot of pounding palm muted guitar notes in there. In the chorus specifically, the keyboard that they add to that song is really, really nice. There's a lot of I don't know, dude. There's a lot of little pieces and parts and little intricacies that I wonder if it's because of Jerry Finn. I wonder if because they might have brought in a much more stripped down album. But that's exactly what a producer's for. Is you're sitting in there and you're like, all right, here's our song, and it's like a 6 or 6.5 out of 10, right? And then he goes, all right, you add this, change this, let's mess with the levels a little bit. Here, how do you guys think about this? And then they go, oh crap, let's release this one, and then you get a more like 8, 5, 9 out of 10 song. It just raises it up a couple of beats. And I would love to know, like, from the band, if I could talk to them one day, like, how did we get there? Was this all stuff that you guys brought to? And it might very well be stuff that they brought to. I'm not discounting their talents at all. They're amazing musicians. I mean, I've watched them play live a few times, and I've been listening to them for almost 30 years. I know that they're great musicians, but you know, something I wrote down that I think is interesting. I'd love to get your feedback on is MXPX has great guitar, great production. The music is exactly what I like to hear. I even like the vocals, but the issue I typically have with their music, specifically the older records, is that every single song is about a girl. It's just so sappy, like a kicked puppy or something. I just don't relate to it. And when I was younger, I occasionally did, but I was still really pissed off back then and I wanted to hear angry music. On the flip side, if you wanted to get a girlfriend into punk at all, MXPX was a fantastic gateway band.
That still holds up, by the way. I can confirm
Yeah.
that.
Well, like that's okay. So like the only thing that drives me nuts about MXPX is like I can't like an entire album very often. Again, their newest album is a complete departure from their lyrical content. So I'm hoping that this is just a thing from the past. They were just young men. But like their older records, man, it's hard to get through a record because every song is the same topic. It's every single song is about a girl. Like I that's cool, but like, man, it is exhausting because I don't want to hear that personally. Like, what's your opinion on this? I mean, do you care? Does it bother you?
It doesn't bother me. I hear what you're saying. And I think it's pretty cool. I'm glad you had that opinion because you had that opinion on some other bands that you don't like. And
Yeah.
it's the same opinion. So, you know, at least it's a consistent opinion, as you say, with a band that you very much do.
Right.
And I think that's so that criticism though of MXPX, it's hard for me too because I feel like that was a criticism of them even in the moment. Like even
Really?
in the moment when everyone was young and everyone had those things, even then it kind of felt like that. And I just think those early albums are written from such a teenage perspective. It's almost
Right.
amazing that they became such like this mature band that I think of for these very refined and mature songs. And they weren't. It's weird because I say that because they weren't silly and gross out funny the way that their contemporaries were either. There is just something that was always just very rated G or very rated PG about them that made them very uncool. Like for me,
Well,
they were just sort of uncool. And I
tooth and
wasn't
nail,
necessarily
bro.
like the coolest guy in the world either, but I could even kind of recognize how they were sort of, there was something, I guess cringe is what we would call it now, but that's how they kind of felt, I guess, back in the day.
Well, yeah, I mean, full disclosure, Tooth and Nail was a Christian label, quote unquote. So they were
Mhm,
of that ilk. They didn't go out and say a lot of curse words, which I can respect, but they also didn't have songs about drugs and partying because they didn't really do that much.
mhm.
So they weren't going to have that. And these kids were from the suburbs. I don't know that they had any like, super rough upbringing. So I don't know that they were going to sing about that. I don't think that they had any money problems necessarily. They weren't necessarily rich either, but like they were just middle class kids. So I think there's a lot of subject matter that like I'm attracted to that these guys just weren't going to write anything about it. But they've still got great songs. So there's still plenty of music that I do like. I don't know.
I will say this though. Looking at it, I have like a little bit different take as an adult though. Looking at a lot of these albums, that it bothers me less as an adult, like with this band, than it did as a kid. So maybe that's just sort of the social pressures of what you like and what you don't like. But I guess I can kind of
Really?
recognize, yeah, some of that music for what it is at the time. But also like a lot of their songs are also that kind of that adolescent song about like gaining your own independence and what
Yeah.
you do through life and that kind of stuff. And they have a lot of songs on that same kind of subject matter. So again, if you don't connect with this band or you're not the right kind of age for that kind of stuff can only resonate with the person when you hear it at the time when it's there, or else it never, and it maybe will resonate with you forever once you hear it that one time. Just the way, like,
Right.
so again, some of their subject matter and some of their songs now has really resonated with me on the last few albums. And it's because I'm basically about the same age of these guys going through the same thing. So I'm kind of in alignment, but there's the same way, like nowadays where I can recognize really good artists that are like much younger people, and there's just some of their songs that I can just never kind of get with, and it just immediately don't appeal to me just by the fact of my birth certificate is why
Right.
that's the case. And I think with a band like MXPX now in their records, they have a lot more range to what they put on there too, as you were saying. So there is like there's like a song like Cautious Optimistic along with all like the panicky songs that are on the new album, and so you have all of those flavors. I think back in the day, and this was the thing with a lot of the pop punk and a lot of just underground music, these guys just put everything they had on albums. So there's
Right.
just a lot of quality filtering for like what is
Yeah.
better and what is worse. And part of, not only did they get better as musicians, they got better with the sound. Like Jerry's not with us, and those albums still sound great. So obviously they picked up, I think, a lot uh down the way. But I think these bands get better at actually curating what they release. And
Well,
I think that makes a big difference.
I mean, as they've gotten older, they've dealt with loss, maybe a divorce, friends leaving and people passing away, losing jobs. They've dealt with, world tragedies, COVID. So all these different things have come across their table over the past 25, 30 years. So there's no way they're going to write the same album as they did in the 2000s. But like, I do think they held on to the high school, American Pie aesthetic a little longer than I was thinking they were going to. Because I'll be honest, man, they were the first band that I was like, all right, I've outgrown this band. It was MXPX. They were, because my first bands that I ever got into were Rancid, MXPX, NoFX, and Suicide Machines. I've cited those four bands as my entry to punk my whole life. MXPX is the only one that I had to like grow out of and then come back to. And I'm honestly a little surprised I did, but their later material is so damn good. And Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo isn't even that late in their career, but that is a masterpiece of an album.
It is, and it's a big departure from what they had before. I think
Correct. Yeah.
that's the big thing. And I have almost the opposite inverse situation was the album
I'm
they came up
shocked.
with after this. I think in
Okay.
'03. I just didn't really like it. Just takes it.
What's it called?
It's got the guy with the tattoos on his head. Let me on his arms. On the cover, it's not 10. You loved 10 years in running because to have that before everything, ever after that one, and yeah, no, it's that one. So like it was all right, but I just kind of thought like, okay, that's like mature pop punk that I don't really. Their maturing was what made me realize that I was too old for it. It's kind of funny because it's just a few years
Right.
later, but a band like them suddenly sounding kind of mature or just sort of not connecting, that was like the sign to me that I had maybe gotten too old and was outgrowing this stuff, which is funny because an album later is when I think they really fully formed into that adult version. On the that was the album I'm thinking about in 05 with Panic, is when I think they sort of form into that adult version that we sort of saw, that we see them in now. And that version is the version to me that I really sort of reconnected with. So maybe it is what you're saying, that as they hung on and as they kind of changed. Also, like Mike was one of the first guys that I remember doing like a country album, and I still think that's lame, even though I respect a lot of these guys for doing it. Like I'm just not. It's not.
Was it country or was it folk?
Well, it's the cow. No, they were like he was going through his Mike Ness stage in that time period. Like they were trying to like work in Nashville. Like it was a thing that all the punk rockers were getting after, like the folk. It wasn't really folk. Okay, so there was the era of everyone had like the acoustic version of their songs, and then there was the era where like they were all gonna make like it started with like Woody Guthrie, again a very folk theme, but really was kind of that cowpunk era. And I mean, I just didn't get it, or I still don't. I don't know. Like I think it's cool for them for doing it, but it's just not my.
Was it under Mike Herrera? I need to listen to that because I want to know if it's like more like country or if it's actually like revival tour era, like not Scott Byron, but old dude from Hot Water Music, Chuck Reagan. Ben Nichols. Was it that kind of stuff? Was it Kevin Seconds, or was it like actually like Mike Ness, Cheating at Solitaire, country, twangy rock and roll, punk rock, cowpunk stuff?
So like they're listed as like alternative country or cowpunk. It's Mike Herrera's Tumble Down is the name of the
All right, I'm gonna look that up real quick because I've never even heard of this before. So you've heard this, I guess, and you didn't care for it, huh?
I can't tell you what it sounds like. I just remember not liking it. I remember being haunted.
I mean, that tells you a lot right there. If you heard it,
I don't even know if it was bad. I just wasn't into it when it was happening.
Let's see. Let me look at
It's probably good, but just.
I mean, don't say it if it ain't true. You don't gotta fluff nobody. I don't think he would care either. The worst thing an artist can deal with is a person that's like, no, man, I like you, so I like this. It's like, no, just tell me if you like it or not. I need to know. I would imagine he's probably the same kind of guy. Oh yeah, dude, the plaid pearl snaps. Oh my goodness. I do like the cover art though.
Like I'm listening to some of it now. Yeah. It's kind of weird because it's got the music of like that cowpunk stuff, but it still has the vocals of like an MXPX Mike Herrera thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to this. Dude. This is intriguing me.
What a weird rabbit hole we found on this.
I know, dude. Well, I like Mike Ness's solo stuff, and I like cowpunk. I like Social Distortion, but I also like folk punk and folk music. So, like, there's a good chance I like this. I don't mind pop punk vocals over some country music. I'm just a little surprised. I never knew he did this. Where's the big sideburns and the stupid cowboy hat? That would make me not listen to it.
And it's kind of funny though, because I've had this comment on my channel before, and I think it's probably true that like. Shout out to MXPX and Mike specifically for just kind of staying online and keeping himself in the game and relevant, and the presence that they have for a band that's not like they're big, but they're not this super international mega band, but they still get enough play online, enough attention. They get on enough shows. Like they're still big enough,
right?
Compared to a lot of their peers who you might have say were bigger than them, in their prime. They've stuck around better than I would have thought, and the respect level on them has changed quite a bit. I don't know if like everyone who listened to him, guys like me, kind of just got older and became the older guard, or what it is. But I feel like now it's more of a joke about them being lame and less of like you are lame for listening to them. I don't know what it is. If everyone's just calmer now or what it is.
Do you remember when NoFX was like criticized as not being punk?
That
was a big thing.
I mean, I've just known NoFX has always been like hated, not necessarily of.
No, dude, they were called like not punk. They were people like, you like NoFX? That's not punk rock. I heard that shit my entire high school and early 20s, dude. I heard it about Rancid. Yeah. People said it about Rancid, like, oh, that's bubblegum music. And like, I think MXPX had the same thing going on where they were just criticized a bunch, but if you stick out the criticism, all the critics tend to do a 180 and go, oh man, he handled all that bullshit I was putting him through. He must be an all right guy. I must have this. It's real stupid, but that's what people do. I just stopped listening to him for a while, came back to him and was like, all right, I need this back in my life. So
I think it was smart for them generally to stay around the scene though, because like there's like softer places to land on the way down whenever the big fat is gone too. so if you completely like ostracize yourself and all this stuff takes off, then maybe there's nowhere to kind of
Right.
go back to. And so again, like a band like MXPX, which has probably even rarely been like, they're known, but has rarely ever been on MTV or anything like that, and got very little play, can still be, the third band from the top on the NoFX farewell shows. It's a pretty good spot for a band like that. All
That
things
was a
considered.
lot higher up than I was expecting them to be on a show like that.
I think
Like,
a lot of that probably just comes down to the personal relationships between Mike and between the mics. They
I
get to
think that
be
they've earned
such
a
good
good
friends.
spot though. They've earned it. Are they really? I didn't know they were good friends like that.
Yeah. Mike likes to like, so like when I saw them recently, it's funny, these two bands, because they had the Rain Out night one. MXPX was essentially the headliner, and it was a whole day the next day of Mike giving the other Herrera hell for his god making the storm happen and all that stuff. So they were clouding each other all day long. But no, there's I think there was that one EP that they released it on Fat in like 2002, and like ever since then they've just had
Okay.
like this kind of relationship, and every now and then you'll see
They also
MXPX.
did a cover of NoFX, didn't they? The
Yeah,
War Heroism, maybe.
they have quite a. He's got the Franco Un American
That's what it was. Franco
that he's
Un-American.
released, and a few other things. It's just it's part of the. I think that there is a certain old guard from back in our
Right.
day of the guys that are just still around, and they you sort of see them all interacting and always kind of with each other. I guess you could tell who gets along with who, and who the inner circle is. And I think Mike is someone that was a bit of a surprise to me, but kind of in that, at least in the NoFX inner circle, or the Fat Mike inner circle.
I think that at a certain point, competition turns into camaraderie. You know what I'm saying? I think that when you're younger, you're like, no, we want those spots on those shows. Well, now it's gotten to be there's plenty of people to go around, man. So why don't we just tour together type stuff, you know?
Well, and then I think about it now, like it's for a lot of these bands doing a headline. What's the value in doing a headlining tour for a lot of these bands, unless you're a true headliner? Like I think,
Right.
I think it's okay to at whatever level. So tour off of the NoFX, Rancid, and Bad Religion, and be the second best band on that thing, and be, when the crowd is absolutely juiced up, be that band that does that, or be the Rancid and tour with the Green Day and the Smashing Pumpkins and cash in there. It's not bad to not headline. It's such a like loser washed up mentality, but I think it's what keeps you like alive. It's how that thing is. The joke of the rock musician is pathetic for spending the fourth decade of doing what they always wanted to do. I think MXPX kind of proudly can fit. It's one of those bands that endured and gets to keep doing that.
I talk to a lot of bands, man. I'm friends with a lot of musicians, and I can tell you a headlining slot isn't even the slot most of these bands want. They want like the second or third from the top. They want either the co-headline spot or the one before that, even like the what they call that? They call it a feature slot. They want to be on at like 9 o'clock at night, not 11:30. They're like, dude, I don't want to be on when everybody's tired. Like, I want to play and have my band, and they do want to come in and play with a band bigger than them. At least from the people that I talk to, I think that's an interesting, point of consideration. So, with this album, The Ever Passing Moment, what are some of the songs that you like off of the album? Did you have any favorites?
Yeah, let me look at the ones. Actually, I'm looking at the prior one. Obviously, we talked about the opener. That
So
song,
good.
I think was just forever immortalized for me and probably all the other kids about my age on the Warped Tour 02 DVD. There's
is that one on there?
A live performance of My Life Story, and it's just like, it's a spirited song, so it's really fun to see a Warped Tour, middle of the day kind of Warped Tour crowd, right, with that sun beating down. It's great whenever you can watch a Warped Tour DVD from the comfort of your home with the air conditioner on in the summer.
You
I
ain't
love
kidding.
doing that. 2 whole years is that cheesy kind of stuff that we were talking about that MXPX can do really, really well, and I like when they do it right there. The Answer in Question and One Step Closer to Life kind of fit that mold of like songs you can see that hatched later on these later albums of that like dad pop punk, that real reflective side of things. Other than that, maybe Unsaid would be the other one that sticks out. I have an issue with this album in terms of what you said as it being meaty, and I think I have that generally with a lot of MXPX's albums. A little bit what we talked about earlier. Like I think of Life in general. My issue with it is that like I associate a million songs with it. Like there's just so much there. I don't even know if it's that long, but I associate a lot of their albums just have a lot of things on them from this time period. So like this is an album that I owned. It's an album that I found him on. And it's an album I would rarely listen to the end, even though they had really good songs to the end of it. And I don't know why that's the case. That was the case back then. And I found it this week with the two albums we were going through, where this was kind of a multi-sitting album, and it's not a slog to get through.
No.
But it just I don't know what about it makes it slightly less listenable than the sum of its parts, which is a really weird criticism, but I do feel that is the case with MXPX in general.
Well, excuse me, dude. I don't know. You said you were tired earlier, and it just put me in a yawning the whole time. Okay, so we have like 50% of the same songs. I like My Life Story, 2 Whole Years, Next Big Thing, and Foolish were also two of my favorites. Unsaid, Here With Me, they were coming in groups, and then obviously Misplaced Memories. Like those are probably the 5 or 6 songs that I like the best off the album. But I do think that there's some fat you could trim on this record. So I also think that if you're going to talk about a record that was from the year 2000, you need to try and put your mental back in the 2000, frame of mind, because back then records were far less like they didn't come out as often. Like we might get one per year, maybe. And all their stuff that they were trying to put out had to be on that one record, because they weren't going to go through the trouble of putting out an EP, because digital releases simply weren't a thing yet. They didn't become like a real staple until like 10 years later, man. Like 2010 is when you started seeing like online releases all the time, dropping music and da-da-da. And even that might have been a little early. It's that hasn't been a thing for more than 15 years, man.
No, in 2000, that's still supreme physical media.
That's what I'm saying. So like when this came out, the reason that it's so long is because they had to tour on this one record for a long time, and we're living in 2025. So like we're looking at things through our lens of now, and now this is too much music.
Always important to remember with CDs specifically, because it's the only time, other than I guess now with streaming, where you had the physical media, where you had that much control over the songs. So if it's not a perfect experience from beginning to end, the way vinyl had to be, or even the way, cassette kind of had to be, even though you had fast forward, CD, part of the appeal for CD is that you could go from song 1 to song 11 like that. So it didn't necessarily have to be that type of experience the way a side A, side B vinyl experience had to be.
Yep. One of the other cool things is that with stuff like this, back in 2000, you could still make cassette tape mixtapes. Like I was still balls deep in cassettes in 2000, man. I mean, I got my first car, I think, in 2000, and I didn't have a CD player in it. I went and bought a cassette player for it. So like back then, cassettes were still like a primary source of music. So I would make mixtapes. So you could get a CD like this. Hey, it's only got, 8 out of the 15 songs I really like. Good. You make it a mixtape instead. You got all your CDs stacked in a box somewhere and all your mixtapes floating on your front seat of your car. So like there's going to be full chunks of albums that we don't even remember because we didn't ever listen to them. I do think that's kind of interesting,
Is there albums? There's albums I think I owned, but I totally just had them on like recorded tapes.
Oh no, dude. Yes, all the Lookout record stuff. I didn't own it. I had it on mix. I had it on cassettes.
It's like, cause I know the songs. I know this song comes after that, as if I own the album, and I can't recall like some albums ever owning them. It's like, oh shoot, they must come from the tapes.
Even better, you ever get a cassette tape that you have for so long, but the order of the songs wasn't right? So when you listen to the album now, you think it's the next song up and you got the wrong song? I have stuff like that happen. Not a lot, but it's a few things.
Oh, like because the mix.
Somebody made me a tape, but it wasn't in the right order. And so when I get it now, I listen to it and I'm like, the next song up is going to be this one. And then it's a different song. I'm like, oh, wait, that was just a mixtape.
Yeah, you just get used to, you would get used to other people's edits, basically.
Right. Yeah. The album. Their playlist was different than whatever MXPX put out on their album. But yeah, man, like, dude, it's interesting, man. I don't mean to just bring Rancid up like we always do, but they also have an album turning 25 this year, but they've also got one turning 30 this year. And I'm doing a whole a whole video. I think I might make it 2 videos where I'm breaking down every single song on Out Come the Wolves. And I'm going to do like probably an A-side and a B-side video. And I'm going to talk about every single song, the lyrics, all of it, right? I'm also going to do a video on Rancid 2000 and break it down also by track, but I'm going to make it a little less intricate, I guess is the right word. And I'm going to come up with like the EPs were the songs that I really like from that recording session that I think they should have put out as an EP instead of a full length. But man, I had a point I was trying to get to with that. I just lost it. anyways, whatever. Rancid, we like them. People know that by now. Yeah, I think MXPX is a great band. I would like to see them play live at least one more time before it's all said and done. This album is far, far better than I was thinking it was going to be. I thought, okay, it's going to have 2 or 3 songs I really like, but they mix that doo-wop in their music a lot. They have this like old 50s rock and roll. It's very Ramones-esque. It has like yeah, it's very Ramones-esque. They did a lot of what the Ramones did. They take these doo-wop songs, they speed them up, and then you get this like pop punk stuff out of it, which I think puts MXPX in a category more or less like of their own, because they're like, instead of them sounding like the Riverdales, they just sound like No Effects mixed with the Ramones versus like, more hardcore. It goes into this melodic, like snap your finger, mid-paced, Chick Magnet is a great example of that. That song When I Was Young was a perfect song for somebody like me. So anyways, this album I thought was great. I gotta give it like a 8 out of 10. I don't think it was anywhere close to a 9 because, well, I guess 8 is kind of close, but it's not that good. But it's a solid record, man.
I think that's about right. I think of like a good B, and that's what that is.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and purchase a copy on CD. Probably, I'd like to have it on disc.
Nice.
But yeah, man, MXPX, the ever passing moment, great record. Okay, now for the album, you guys are probably all waiting on us to talk about. What's cool is that I basically get 3 videos out of each one of these now because I've learned the hard way that it's smart to just break it up, then drop the whole thing. It's easier on the viewer.
And people watch the full cut.
Yeah, exactly. I usually wait like a week, and it's almost always a completely different audience.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
I don't really understand why it works that way, but I learned that it did, and I was like, oh. And so I started doing it.
People that watch hour-long videos,
I think some people look at it based on the thumbnail, and they go, oh, 2 albums instead of 1, or, oh, it's a long form. I'm driving, let me listen to this stuff. I don't know, but I appreciate every single person that watches it regardless of when it is they choose to watch it. So